Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sunday Night Lives with Dr. Boz. I am an internal medicine physician, and I am here on Sunday nights in my clinic, which is always the place where I know where everything's at and I can control the sound and the interruptions. So welcome to Sunday night. I'm here to answer some questions, and I've got a great show planned for you. As per usual, I start out by just doing a sound check with everybody, making sure this live stream is really live streaming. And I am going to do one little glitch I see here. Interactions. Push this little fella. There we go. All right, so those live comments should be catching up with the real thing here in just a second. There we go. So thank you, John, for saying it sounds great. That microphone little button that delayed me just a little bit, so I had to shut down and turn back off, or turn back on. So thank you. Again, we're here on Sunday night. I do have some great follow-ups for two of the patients that have offered to do their education right here live on YouTube, so that all of you can learn from their struggles and their successes. We're going to talk more about their stories in just a bit, but we're going to step back and do a few housekeeping. So I love seeing where you guys are from. This classroom has grown to be literally worldwide. These live comments are super important to me. I do have some very interactive videos that I've got planned coming up in the next month. And really taking time to learn how, where is my audience struggling, where are they succeeding, where do they need the most gap of education. This past week, again, some really great successes in my own clinic and my own personal patients, and a couple of them you're going to get to see where they're at and what they're working on. We're going to use a few things that I empower my patients with, and we've got those for you to download so that you can help your local physician improve your health one ketone at a time. All right, so we're going to do a few things while I'm continuing to watch where you guys are from. I've done this several times now, and I've learned I can't believe how many people this is a benefit for, and that is I'm going to check my blood sugar here live on YouTube. I like to point out that I do fast starting usually a few hours before this live show. I continue to fast until I reach a specific metabolism. We're going to talk more about that tonight, but have learned that when I do this in front of everybody, they really do see it's just not that scary. I visited another patient who is, in his late 70s and trying to restore his white blood cells, and the idea of pricking his own finger was almost as scary as the surgery. So here's my ketones. You'll see that strip is purple. That takes just a little bit longer for the machine to run down. The glucose is a bit quicker. So that's a ketone level of 1.0. This is one of the signs that my metabolism has been something I've been working on and strengthening over the last few years. I do this as a way to say, this is not how I started out. It's not how Grandma Rose started out either. So here's the glucose, again, a much quicker turnaround, glucose of 88. So you would see that Dr. Boz ratio, pretty easy to do that math even live, is 88 divided by the 1.0 gives me a Dr. Boz ratio of 88. So that the process of what I just did there, measured my own metabolism, looked at it live with you, is in part what I really can't wait for me to teach you a little bit more about what's happening with the patients I've been studying. So again, just scrolling through, thank you, Mr. or Mrs. Kennedy from Australia. Thank you. I have a few people that have checked in from Hawaii. Again, Hawaii has a little bit of my heart, as that's where my oldest son is going to college. We've got a few folks in Virginia, and one from Fort Worth, Texas, some from Tennessee. I really appreciate it. It's amazing how much this process of preparing for Sunday night and just deciding which things I should focus on has been very much this kind of ongoing dialogue in the back of my mind and what I want to talk about each week. We're going to have a couple of teachable moments later on in the show, so I'm going to show you a couple things. I am going to do this again And mainly because I think it's still kind of misunderstood what it is I'm doing. All right, so I'm just showing you a scoop of ketones that I'm putting in I call it ketones in a can, and I'm sure there's marketers with better words than that, but I really care that there's not a lot of extra stuff in the ketones that I would drink. But I also have several patients where I'm used to writing a prescription. I'm used to it being very pure and being able to trust what's in what it is I prescribe for my patients. So when I've looked at several of the supplements that I was trying to get ketones for some of my metabolically broken patients, it took about 4 or 5 months of me saying, all right, let's try a different brand. All right, let's try a different brand. Before I said, forget it, I am going to control this from beginning to end. And I put forth the brave learning curve of how do you make a brand that you can trust, and how do you test it yourself. Again, wasn't planning on figuring that out in my lifetime, but here we are. So I'm going to sip on this again as part of my fasting. We're going to also make sure I check this at the end of the show to wrap in some of these teachable moments. All right. So thank you very much for joining in. I am going to hop over to one of the so there's 2 patients that we're following that we've been doing this for about a month now. The patients' name are Jerry and Stacy, and they are very metabolically different. And I'm doing that in hopes that you can see examples of an extreme difference in why do I recommend the ketogenic diet? What is it about this process as an internal medicine physician that I have literally, I cannot think of a patient that I haven't had this metabolic health discussion with in the last year. Looking at the chronic disease management, the chronic illnesses that show up in every patient that's been to my clinic for 20 years. I don't care if we're talking about brains or we're talking about heart disease or chronically inflamed joints or an immune system. And if you've been around the channel a while, you know that the first person I taught, I did very secretly, but very passionately, and that was when I taught my own mother. That's a picture of my mom before the ketogenic diet. On the back of the book, you can see what she looked like at the end of that year, having lost weight, but also having resurrected her white blood cells in the midst of the 10th year she was fighting her cancer. So again, what I present on this channel is, yes, the ketogenic diet has an amazing way that you can lose weight, but it is so much more about restoring metabolism. And like most things in my clinic, I don't like my patients guessing. I really want them understanding their own metabolic health and not asking me to figure out what that health is for a 15-minute visit or a 30-minute visit if we're really lucky every 3 to 4 months. But instead, they can have a continuous dialogue with what I'd want to see in their data and then what you should be showing with your physician. That's what I hope this leads. All right, we're going to hop over to a different side of this channel and show you a couple of spreadsheets that are my patients. So these patients, I've got 2 of them that are lined up to show you about their health. I am going to pull that off and just remind you a little bit about who are the patients that we are talking about. First of all, we're going to remind you Jerry. Jerry wrote in about a month ago. He's 68 years old. He has had diabetes for the better part of 20 years. We did talk to Jerry about his metabolism, but also he was really kind of not upset, but understandably disappointed that his physician wasn't more of an encourager when he improved his metabolism by dropping his A1C from 10.1 to 9.1. If you look at that little box right there, it had been 6 months, or actually closer to 9 months, excuse me, where he had lost a good 40, might even more than that, 70 pounds. Did he lose that much? Yeah. He had stopped his insulin. His BMI had gone from 38 to 28. That's amazing, especially to do that when you're 68 years old. But his physician was still very concerned that his sugars were running well above 200. He wrote into the channel and said, why? Why isn't he more excited that I've lost all this weight? I've stopped the insulin. My blood pressure's high. That might be one of my favorite shows because I really got to unpack what is it about Jerry's hemoglobin A1C that has been making his fingers go numb, making his brain foggy, increasing his risk of a heart attack, and it was the years of insulin resistant and high blood sugar that really put him at risk. So you'll see that little note at the bottom of his slide there that we went from OMAD, which is 1 meal a day, and I asked him to enhance his length of time between his fast to 1 meal every other day. Now, this is not something I would have asked somebody to do the first week on a ketogenic diet. In fact, 9 months into this, and Jerry still really struggles with finding the social pressures of eating and then the delivery of what it's doing to his metabolism. We're going to check in on Jerry and look at his spreadsheet. I will give you a spoiler alert that it's pretty fun to watch him. Here is our other patient, though, is Stacy, and she is a 36-year-old mom in my community. Jerry does not live in my community, but Stacy does. She is a medical provider here. We've worked out at CrossFit before, and she's fascinating to talk to about how she biohacks her own health and what she does to teach her patients about improving their health. And she was really struggling with trying to find that those last few pounds of weight just wouldn't come off. She's really quite fit and has had really not a lot of weight to lose, but could feel that she was more sluggish than she'd been over the last couple of years and wondered if she could get the adult acne to go away, or with a ketogenic diet, if she could get that little bit of distracted brain at the end of the day, or kind of wore out feeling to feel better after she'd worked some really long hours. And of course, she heard me always talking about how I couldn't believe my energy was so much better. So she came over to the side of a ketogenic diet, at which point I said, here's some things I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to work on this spreadsheet with me, and we'll share the spreadsheet so I can keep up on what you're doing. We taught a little bit about, we invited her to the local keto group here in my town, which is on Friday mornings. If you're in my area and you're looking for a support group, come on by. The last part that we talked about was how important her evening hours were to clean up the snacking that she really was doing right up until the point she went to bed at night. Stacy's not alone in struggling with using those evening hours as a time to snack. But more importantly, she was struggling with her morning glucose being a little elevated. So her blood sugars were really nice during the day, but it was those evening blood sugars that she was definitely having a little bit of problem with. So we said, all right, let's take a look at how you're doing. So in that respects, I think I'm going to start with, we're going to start with Jerry's spreadsheet. So if you look this spreadsheet, and for those of you that have been around a while, you've probably heard me use not just the spreadsheet, but you'll hear the calculation of the Dr. Boz ratio and how important it is to help me guide you. In fact, I've seen on Facebook and on some of the other social medias, here's how long people should fast. How long will you fast this week, Dr. Boz? Will be some of the questions that I get asked. And I really can't tell you how dangerous it is to measure your fasting length with a clock instead of measuring it with your own metabolism. So as I look at what drives up people's numbers and makes them better or worse, I am continually amazed at how each patient is so much different depending on where they're at in their struggle. So if you look, this is Stacy's spreadsheet. So we're just going to take a minute and show you what I had Stacy do as I shared this spreadsheet with her, and we look at this together as she enters in numbers when she's trying to fast. Now, for those of you looking for a spreadsheet, I have had lots of requests since this first aired that they wanted a copy of the spreadsheet. So I've included that in the show notes below that you can scroll down and say the free ebook you could download or the free spreadsheet. So here's Jerry's numbers. Stacy's numbers of 279, I was like, oh my goodness, how did I miss that high of a number? So you can see my blue square there. This is what I was trying to do on Stacy's. I'll get to Stacy in a minute. Let's use Jerry. Jerry is our 68-year-old who, again, a year ago, he was seeing his physician every few weeks because of many complications of 20 years of diabetes. And as much as Jerry was really proud of how losing 70 plus pounds of weight has turned into a renewed fountain of youth, you can see that glucose of 279 is pretty alarming. That's really high. But his numbers for the glucose as he fasts will teach us what's happening with his metabolism. So let's just take a minute here. You can see the numbers in blue are the hours he's fasted. The numbers in red, right next to those, are his glucose. You've got a glucose ketone index in red, and then you have the Dr. Boz ratio in green. So let's just scroll down here. As I look at the 279, and then at 18 hours his glucose was down to 238. His Dr. Boz ratio now slips under 100, which is one of the benchmarks that I use to say how long should somebody fast for. And the first step that I ask them is, what are you trying to accomplish? In Jerry's situation, we are really trying to reverse some of his body's cellular damage that's happened from years and years of too much insulin, too high of sugar. So we would love to get that Dr. Boz ratio of 40 or less for Jerry. That's going to be a tough task with such a high blood sugar. So we then would see he would get to 24 hours, his blood sugar down to 210. He would get to 30 hours, about the same, 36 hours, and then that blood sugar starts to go up, but so do his ketones. And I think this is one of the first teachable moments that I really try to point out to my patients, that when you're only checking one of these biomarkers, when you're only looking at glucose, you've just given me half of that metabolically mysterious equation that's hidden behind how you're feeling. Jerry's enthusiasm about how much his body is better is hidden to his physician without looking at some of these numbers. So as he got down to that 190, and then his blood ketones got up to 310, now his Dr. Boz ratio was 61. For those folks that have been around the channel a while, you'll know that I have a ketone a Dr. Boz ketone index that really does improve as they understand what their metabolism is. Let's do this just for a second. We're going to take off Jerry's spreadsheet there and just remind people, if they're new to the channel, there's 3 things that I'm really looking for when patients are asking me to help them with their health. We're using those 2 points in your metabolism, the glucose and the ketones, to really look at your cells at a much more, even beyond microscopic level. It's really an equation that changes as your body heals or as you deal with new stresses. So if we can get that Dr. Boz ratio under 80, it's a pretty good chance that you have autophagy, but we can be pretty confident that you're going to lose weight if you get that Dr. Boz ratio under 80. If you get it under 40, that's what we wanted for Jerry. Is his immune system has been under attack. He really has had some cellular damage from neuropathy in his fingers. I would guess that his heart has an increased stress on it from the years of high insulin and high sugar, and he's looking to restore that, to repair his body. So I'm going to push him to at least get a Dr. Boz ratio of 40 or less. And when they get into the really enhanced metabolic problems, I'll push them to get to a Dr. Boz ratio of 20 or less. Those would be my patients who are fighting cancer and using a ketogenic diet to help them with that, or they've got a really extreme autoimmune problem like Crohn's disease, and they're losing weight and they're malnourished and they've got a shorter timer on life. These would also be the place that if you're looking at a prescribed ketogenic diet for seizures, that number of a Dr. Boz ratio of 20 or less really does, first of all, it has a calculation, but second of all, it is metabolically very difficult to reach for, and it's also, I would say, more likely to have folks that struggle without a support group. So getting a Dr. Boz ratio of 20 or less is pretty difficult. So let's go back to Jerry. So here we were on September 4th. I've got to find where I'm interacting with that here. Hold on a second. I think I got to do a few little clicks again. Hang in there with me. Interact with Jerry. Okay, there we go. All right, here we go. Got the right spreadsheet again. So as I look at that, September 4th, he then gets into a fast that's in those higher 60 numbers, and his fast got a blood sugar at 67 hours was 187. Again, one of the lowest blood sugars we've seen on him at this point in the study, and his ketones are up to 3, a solid 3, which gives him a Dr. Boz ratio of 62. So again, really powerful. By the time he gets to the end of that fast, his his ketones again hanging out in that 3 range, getting those Dr. Boz ratios in the 70s to 80s, a very powerful reset for Jerry's metabolism. So as you'll notice over on the way right side, you'll see his weight doesn't change much during the fast, but it's after the fast that we can often see their weight settle into what would be expected. Some of my patients do lose a lot of weight during the fast, and they'll gain it back during the days after the fast. I don't like them focusing on their weight loss during those fasts. I really want them saying, what's your metabolism? How are your ketones doing? And again, 9 months into this story, probably 10 months now, Jerry's metabolism is rock solid. It is one of the best metabolisms, and you can tell that you can tell that by how robustly he's making these ketones. I really want you to keep this in mind when we get to Stacy, who's our lean, crossfitting, muscle-bound 36-year-old woman whose ketones are nothing like this, and which will bring us back to what I'm hoping that you can learn from looking at the 2 extremes. So let's go on to September 12th. We got Jerry's, again, 1 meal a day. You can see that he was really just trying to not hyper-focus on the time. I said, stop, there are lots of apps out there where they'll look exactly at how many minutes they've been fasting, and when they're solid in their improvement, when they're solid in their journey, I try to get them not to focus on the clock and not to focus on the scale. So I said, Jerry, if you can kind of keep it at 1 meal a day until you get done with your traveling. He had written in saying, you know what, I think my numbers do look really good when I eat only once every 48 hours, but I am struggling with how much my friends are, watching me and then tease, it's the temptations of eating. I just feel unsettled. And I said, you know what, do 1 meal a day until you get done with your travels, and then we'll try 1 meal every other day. All right, so here he is, 1 meal a day on September 13th. You can see some really nice Dr. Boz ratios there. There's one of 58, and it's powerful how much that metabolism is. Again, 10 months into the story, but once he added the intermittent fasting to his body, we've now got sugars out of that 200 range for the first time since we've been looking. Here's a Dr. Boz ratio of 43. Again, blood sugar, probably the lowest one to this point was 173. And it's only half of the equation, though. What's powerful about Jerry's metabolism at this point is his body has ketones at the 4.0 level. Powerful. Good job. Very good job. So I think Jerry gets home from his travels late in the teens of September, maybe even the 20th of September, where he stops doing 1 meal a day. Here again, you've got several of the sugars that get back up into the high 200s. His ketones, when he's eating 1 meal a day, hang out in the 2 to the high 1s. Here's a 2.7 with a blood sugar of 180. So you can see there's a yin and yang with this metabolism that's actually pretty robust to get his numbers to look as good as they do. So let's see here. That on September 20th, his blood sugar was 182, his ketones 2.7, and his Dr. Boz ratio was 67. So now, yeah, he gets home from his vacation, early 20s, early September 20th, essentially. And now he's ready to say, I'm in my own home. I'm not traveling across the country anymore. Him and his wife are in an RV and just taking in the sights and hanging out with lots of friends. But boy, the temptation of how hard that is when you've got people that don't fast and maybe don't even know what a ketogenic diet is. I didn't want him to fall off the wagon, and I didn't want him to be discouraged. So I said, before we go to that one meal every other day, so OMEOD, a meal every 48 hours, if you would, I said, just wait till you get your routine controlled. Stick with one meal a day, and we'll pick up where we left off when you get home. So here is September 22nd, and he starts that one meal every other day. So again, 7:30 in the morning, his sugars were 236. This is pretty high. When people write in and say, I can't seem to get my blood sugars from 110 down to 100, I almost have to chuckle because that's the final tuning of metabolism. Jerry would love to have blood sugars of 110 at this point. But his years of diabetes have led to sugars that are too high, and we are going to get them controlled. So let's take a closer look at this. So at 7:30 in the morning, his blood sugar was 236. By 5:30 that night, it's about 100 points lower, and his ketones are almost a whole point higher. So he goes from a Dr. Boz ratio of 138 to 73. Again, showing me a really solid sign that his metabolism can rescue him. It's just that his system is very filled with glucose. So he finishes out that day. Next morning, he gets up bright and early, 4 o'clock in the morning, and by golly, his sugars are up to 166. It'd probably be right at the time his cortisol is rising. This is part of that phenomenon called the dawn effect, where the brain sends a signal to the body that the sun is about to rise or the sun is rising. And that signal says, hey, we're about to have this human body wake up, and it's going to need some fuel. That stored glucose you have in your liver, I need you to release some. And by golly, Jerry's system has lots of stored sugar. By 8 o'clock that morning, his blood sugar is up to 213, and his ketones are about the same, meaning he doesn't really have a need to use much of his ketone fuel because there's so much glucose available, so high, 213. It goes up to a few hours later. He's so good about checking this often. I'll tell you, the commitment to do this many checks it's super helpful for me. I geek out saying, if I can get somebody to check their numbers this much, it makes my job so easy. Hold on. I guess that sound is terrible when I drink, so I'm sorry. I'll try not to do that next time. The last time I drank while on the show, I got so many people commenting saying, you can't make that noise. It reverberates through the microphone. So sorry about that. I will not do that. So let's get to the end of his 48-hour fast. We're at that September 24th, I think, is when he ate. So you can see, well, actually right here is where he ate, 4 p.m. Yeah, that's about when he eats. Usually it's about 4 p.m. So it's on September 23rd. That's 48 hours into the fast. Before he eats, his blood sugar was 182 and his ketones were 3.6. That gave us a Dr. Boz ratio of 50. And again, that's one of the best ratios possible. If he was only looking at the glucose numbers and not looking at ketones, check out what happened about 5 hours after he ate. So it's now 9 p.m. and his glucose is down. And I have many people that have written in saying, I'm checking my glucose. I've been on a ketogenic diet. I eat and it makes my glucose go down. And they'll say, I'm still peeing ketones. I'm still in ketosis. And this is a great example of saying, you are only giving me half of the data. I can't see what your metabolism is doing when we're only looking at the glucose. So Jerry does a great job at 9:50 that night, or 9 o'clock that night. His ketones are up to 2.5, which is down a whole point from earlier because his system has been burning through the glucose that just got added, even though it is a high-fat diet. He ate fajitas and a small salad and had water. So a really clean ketogenic diet, really not hardly any carbs there, and not not to say that this is predictable, but when people have they get into their ketogenic world, they'll start eating lots of the carbohydrates that are, or lots of the foods that have a few carbohydrates in them, but they'll eat them more and more and more often. Jerry's been really good about sticking to a very clean, almost a Paleolithic ketogenic diet. I mean, very few vegetables, no fruits, and even very few of the kind of sugar substitutes. So as you get to 10 o'clock that night, he did drop his sugar down to 148, and his ketones really stayed at that same level as he continued to burn through those glucose when he got down to a Dr. Boz ratio of 58. All right, so let's do this. A couple more little teaching moments here for Jerry. So he does another 48-hour fast. He wakes up the next morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. In fact, that's going to be before his dawn phenomenon. And this might have been the one where he texted me the information saying, I got up in the middle of the night because I wanted to prove to people this dawn effect is real. My blood sugars before my cortisol rises in the morning are in the 130s, some of the best numbers I can find. But boy, a couple hours after that, it's over 200 again. What I think is powerful about his metabolism is his ketones continue to be in that 3.0 range. This is really important for his metabolism health. By 10 p.m. that night, we're down to a blood sugar of 130 and a ketone of 4.1 for the rock solid Dr. Boz ratio of 32. Again, getting him under 40 for a Dr. Boz ratio is one sign that I know his metabolism is strengthening. And he ran out of ketone strips here, which I can tell you why, because he's doing an amazing job of checking that often. Praise be to God for Jerry and his commitment to this. But looking at those sugars the next day, we now have a morning blood sugar a little bit lower. By 8 o'clock in the morning, we're in the 180s. Again, that's a first for Jerry. And now his blood sugars stay in the 100s for a whole day. And this is in the, so here he had black coffee, 8 a.m. on the 25th. And I just think the 27th is when he's eating, right? Yeah, 27th is when he's eating. So that's when he had, after the meal, chicken and rice. So I think the meal was on the 24th. He wakes up on the 25th, starts fasting, and then he eats again on the 27th. So could that be right? 26? Oh, that might say 26. Sorry. So he gets to the end of that 48-hour fast on shrimp stir fry is when he eats at 11 p.m. on September 27th. And again, that was right after he hit another record high number of a ketone of 4.5 and a glucose of 163. This was at 1 o'clock that afternoon, and really some solid numbers of his metabolism improving. So as I look at Jerry's, the rest of his scroll sheet here, the one meal every other day, he was able to continue all the way through September 29th. Then the 30th and the 1st come around, and some social issues did push him to say, I couldn't do it for a few days. I had to go back to one meal a day. And then to notice that his sugars, as soon as he's back to one meal a day, those sugars are all above 200. And I just think it's not fair that he has to fast this long to get good numbers. But today, he's at 41 hours fasting this morning at 11 o'clock this morning with a blood sugar of 215, ketones of 3, and a Dr. Boz ratio of 72. Okay, so let's just take a minute to watch your comments, but also just give a moment to say great teachable moments there from Jerry. When I look at my patients who are trying to improve their metabolism, Jerry is a perfect example. When he wrote in, his question was, Dr. Bosworth, do you think my pancreas has burned out? Do you think my pancreas can still make insulin? The answer is yes, it is still making insulin. There are some lab tests that we can do to prove that, but I don't need to prove it any further than what we've done there. And I'm looking at a metabolic health that is very damaged from years of high insulin. Now, it is coupled with a man who is so committed to trying to stay off of these medications, losing, I think it was over 140 pounds. I said 40 earlier, or 70, but he's lost an incredible amount of weight. His health has resurrected. He really is on the path to repairing his system, and he's in his late 60s. So this is not going to happen in a day or two. It's going to take time. But what you can prove by looking at that spreadsheet that we just went through, he has a very solid production of ketones from his mitochondria in his liver. Now, unfortunately, the years of having high triglycerides and high glucose has left his liver filled with stored sugar. I'm just going to show you a picture of this. Let's go here, go here, go here, and here we go. So if you look, this patient's glycogen is stored sugar throughout the body. And when that liver has stored pockets of glycogen, in those fasts that Jerry is doing, he is emptying out some of that stored glycogen. However, as soon as his body empties it, the next thing in line or upstream for storage is his triglycerides. And if I look at a cholesterol profile and say, where does my mind look to see if they have metabolic syndrome, I look first at their triglycerides and their healthy cholesterol. That shows us that as soon as he empties those little glycogen balls, the body has so much of the stored sugar found in the triglyceride component that will dump it right into those glycogen empty spots as soon as Jerry empties it. So we have quite a stack of not just glycogen that he needs to empty in his liver. This slide here actually is one of the ones in my book that I talk about. It talks about when we studied people long term over who is fasting, and these were metabolically healthy people. They were put into a hospital, if you would, and tracked for 40 plus days. If you look over to the phase 4 and 5, those are days: 2 days, 8 days, 16 days, 24 days, 32 days, and 40 days. Where Jerry's metabolism is stuck is somewhere in phase 3, and that is that he is emptying the glycogen storage that is readily available glucose, and as soon as he empties that glycogen, his body has a whole bunch of triglycerides that are so thankful to get rid of their carrying units, which are, it's energy, and triglycerides are a form of fat, but they come from high blood sugars. So his body has been really trying to undo his years of metabolism that have been linked to high blood sugars, and it is clearly in a way that he is improving his health, but it is slow. And if you would ask me what do I think Jerry needs to do at this stage of his treatment, I'm not his physician. I just get to help coach. I want them keeping their local physicians. I really appreciate how much the partnership is for a local physician to help with somebody's health. And I get lots of requests each week to say, can I come fly in and see you? And I'm like, no, don't do that. Let me help you where you're at, because your physician, this is not hard. It's just something that's not been readily teachable or readily taught in our continuing education or in our medical schools. But it's coming. Trust me, it's coming. So for Jerry, I don't like that his sugars are that high. I love to see what happened about the 3rd or 4th day he was able to eat one meal every 48 hours. However, that's really difficult. It's really hard for Jerry to keep that up. So he gets to make a decision. If he can continue with one meal every 48 hours, so that is very restrictive. We can see that his metabolism is really course correcting. I don't want Jerry to go any further than a 72-hour fast. That's why I've asked him to stick to 48 hours, eat till he feels full, and then start the timer over again. In that setting, using metformin is another drug that I would prescribe for him to improve his metabolism. I probably wouldn't write for insulin at this stage. That would be a difficult thing to actually debate out with other metabolic physicians. Would you start insulin because his sugars are so high? The reason I would hesitate to start insulin at this stage is because Jerry is doing so well, and I don't want to take away that that stimulus of saying, if you can own and empower the patient to do what needs to be done for repairing their metabolism, they win. They win in the long game. So that being said, Jerry's decision, it is difficult to eat one meal every 48 hours. And he's not doing this when he's 30 or 40. He's in his late 60s. And how that plays out for him is not an easy thing to have judgment for. I mean, I praise, he's doing very well. So his liver is trying to empty, but it really only gets to make that bigger difference in that 36 to 48 hours. So those last 12 hours of his fast is really when the best part of his metabolism is increasing. All right, we're going to take the last few minutes to talk about our 36-year-old female who is lean and loves her CrossFit. Let's go to, hold on here, we're going to, okay, here's Stacy. That was the one I was not doing right earlier. So we are going to interact with Stacy's profile here. All right, much better. Yes, you can see Stacy's glucose, not in the 200s. Stacy's glucose are in 55, 81. And you can see that she started just a couple weeks ago. I think we're just ending the second or third week that she's on the ketogenic diet. But she has a busy life with kids and all kinds of other distractions. So she's got her rhythm started where she was able to say, yep, my glucose was 81. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, her glucose had gotten down to 63. Still hadn't really crested that ketone above 0.7. And if you scroll down and look at her ketones, you can see that it's 0.7, 0.7, 0.9, 0.4, 0.3. Here you had a 1.5, and it's where she's on day 4, and she went for a 4-mile walk to make that happen. So she was trying to find a way, why is it so hard for me to get these ketones up? And her glucoses look wonderful. In fact, her Dr. Boz ratio, I think if I could compare day to day, Jerry's metabolism was doing better in a Dr. Boz ratio kind of way when compared to Stacy. But this is what I mean by saying, in the show notes below, you will find a link to get your own spreadsheet and download it. If you don't have a meter, please, and you're looking to say, Doc, why isn't this working? Why am I struggling? Don't do this blind. Get the data, and get the data yourself. This glucose monitor, the ketone monitor in one, is my favorite way to get folks started. And you can really start to take a look at what happened with Stacy as she gets into that. This is just day 4, so she was right at the beginning here. She's got a ketone of 1.5 and the glucose of 74 after she did the 4 miles. The next day she gets up early in the morning and she has nice low blood sugars of 70s, but her ketones are 0.4, 0.5, and 0.7 throughout that day. So by this time, she started to take notice that sleep cycle definitely makes a difference, especially when we're looking at metabolism. As soon as the sugars go up and the ketones go down, it is a sign that her body responds to stress. That cortisol stress sends a signal to her liver, and it releases the stored glycogen in Stacy. Now, she doesn't have as much stored glycogen as Jerry, but her system isn't nearly as practiced in the metabolic improvements as Jerry. Jerry is 9 months into this, and although he had a ton of weight to lose, if I'm imagining his mitochondria, I can see his mitochondria are doing a far superior job for producing and burning ketones as readily as he makes them. And that's how he's able to look at those numbers. That's where he's going to get his reversal of his metabolic health. It's why I would not start him on insulin if he's willing to keep trying. So looking further, so here she is, day 8. into her ketogenic diet, 25 minutes awake, and she had a glucose of 80, ketones of 0.8, and a Dr. Boz ratio of 100. So she's getting there, but it is very frustrating for Stacy. A few texts into this saying, what the heck? Why is this so difficult? Why can't I get my ketones up? So let's just scroll down to get you caught up to where she's at, noticing that she never really did get anything like the 3.5s or the 4.0s or the 2.7s that Jerry finds in his daily life. Looking long term at her metabolism, those ketones have finally crested the 1 area. We're now on October 2nd. We're 14 days into the ketogenic diet. 14 days into her ketogenic diet, and I think this was day 2 of her using bone broth, which is another thing I said, if you don't want to do supplements, if you're trying to just get your metabolism to wake up, you can still reach for something for a bone broth. If you're looking for my favorite bone broth, it is the one that I talk about in my book, and it is gelatinous, and I mean that. It is jello-like at room temperature. So let's just see that Stacy gets right up to today, still having very few of her ketones above 1, and writing into me a couple times saying, what in the world is going on? How do I fix this? So let's just hop back over here for a second and say, don't give up. Don't give up. Here's what's up with Stacy, and I will use her metabolism as a way. I had a couple of slides, but I can see we're coming up to the top of the hour, and I do get pretty snarky comments if I keep people on here too long. So I could talk about this for about 5 more hours, but really driving home the point of what am I trying to do, comparing Jerry's really advanced production of ketones with those high blood sugars to Stacy's beautiful control of her blood sugars without much production of ketones. And in Stacy's system, she really is on the very beginning stages of having insulin resistance. And you can tell that by when she gets stressed, her sugars go up, her ketones go down. And I see her life. I mean, I've lived her life where that sleep will just impact her metabolism very quickly. She has not been in the soup of inflammation and high insulin that Jerry has for years. So when Stacy writes into me and says, what can I do? What can I do about this? The first thing I'm going to tell her is outsmart your body. The reason Jerry is able to produce those kind of ketones is his system is used to having a ketogenic or access to ketones. That if we could lock Stacy away from her busy life and mom and job and then late nights to try and get it all tucked away, I could probably resurrect her ketones in about 15 days of perfect living. However, it would kill the rest of her life. Her kids would not have a mother. Her job would wonder where she went. It's not sustainable. Much like pushing Jerry into a meal every other day too early or in a time when it just didn't fit his world, it would crash Jerry's progress, much like if I asked Stacy to say, just do everything perfect for 14 days. You've not been in the real world of seeing patients. It has to match their lifestyle. So I don't want Stacy to find a new mom for her kids for 2 weeks or take a sabbatical for 2 weeks off of her job. If she's going to do that, I want her to have a really fun time, not a time where she is really white-knuckling her metabolism. So she says, but I use MCT oil. I put that in my coffee, and I'm saying go to ketones in a can. So this is the ketones in a can. This is the salts. There are no fats in this. I don't need the fat to go into Stacy's world. I need her to have strict ketones. And what happens when she does that is you kind of jumpstart that all of the cells learn how to use ketones. So as soon as the ketones fall, her sugar, which is already well controlled, and she's got the hang of what it looks like to eat a ketogenic diet. Once those ketones fall after about, I would say, 2 weeks of really just let me metabolize, let me run your metabolism by putting ketones in her circulation. And these salts are very readily absorbed. I love the video on ketones and acne that I had my son do with me. He was 16 and we had started him on a ketogenic diet, I tried to get him to do keto forever, but he's 16 and too many temptations. I put him on the salts when he was really struggling with his acne, and he wanted me to, get the dermatologist to write him for the really enhanced acne medication. And I said, no, not until you switch your metabolism. Give me 2 weeks. You don't have to change anything else about what you do. I want you to drink ketones every day. And what happened was his inflammation went down, and his beautiful 16-year-old metabolism started to say, oh, I want ketones. And you saw the cravings go away. You saw him steadily continue to produce ketones. Even when he stopped the ketones in a can, which he'll go on and off of based on his life, it was powerful how easy it was for his body to make ketones after that. It's like a jump start. What was the best part about that video is we took ketones right before we started the live, and we tested our ketones on the show, and we both had a meter that said it was too high. Anyway, I think that's very funny. People say, does it make a difference? Well, that's the beauty of good supplements, that you should be able to check your blood, which we're going to check mine right here in a minute, which I haven't had that much to drink. We're going to check mine here in just a minute to show you that even though I have an enhanced metabolism, when I'm struggling with a ketogenic diet, or when I have a healthy young woman who's saying, this keto stuff, I get that it would be better for my brain and it would help my acne, and I just don't want to have any, I don't want to have any of those supplements. I'm like, great. Don't put the supplements in long term, but let me boost you through the difficult part, which is those first 2 weeks of taking a mitochondria that is not used to producing ketones in your liver, and it's not used to burning ketones in the rest of your body. The slides that I was going to go through, and I actually will touch on one of them, because I know what Stacy is going to say. She is going to say, hey, I really don't want to lose any muscle mass. She's a big CrossFitter. So if this was Stacy's mitochondria, this is the part that I really want those ketones available. They don't have a transporter that's going to get them across the cellular layer. They are able to slip right through the cellular layer and get into the mitochondria and burn ketones for a living. If I look at the study that I was going to show her, she wants to make sure that she doesn't lose any muscle mass when she's working out. So if I look at the study here by most notably Mr. Lowry, who, for those of you who are looking for the next keto conference, I have been invited, and Mr. Lowry will be there. I can't wait to. I've met him once before, but I bet he probably doesn't remember me. I read all of his research. That's one of my favorite teams to study, and they really do look at the enhanced metabolism for athletes and a ketogenic diet. Dr. D'Agostino and Dr. Volek are on the team as well, but I love Mr. Wilson and Mr. Lowry's research and their delivery of cutting-edge information. This was looking at, does BHB protect the muscle breakdown for healthy athletes? So again, Stacy is a healthy athlete. And when we look at what her system is doing, the standard diet there, which has got that red inflammatory zone, the ketogenic diet that they used, and then they were watching to see that the more the ketones were present, the less that the more they were able actually to build muscle strength, continue to repair muscle, and not break down muscles as they continued on their ketogenic diet. So again, protein synthesis is what we were looking at in this study, and the higher the BHB in circulation, the better we were able to protect their muscles from breakdown. So I know that there are a few myths out there that talk about if I'm an athlete, do I dare do this ketogenic diet? Do I dare do this ketogenic diet? When we're looking at the protection from muscle breakdown, the circulation of their system and their muscle cell, the muscle markers for how well did we preserve their muscle mass, how were we able to grow their muscle strength, and they're really at the cutting edge of being able to study this and look at that. So the process of giving Stacy, our CrossFitter who's lean, who really is doing the ketogenic diet because she's got some inflammatory markers that for the women if you can think back to that 36th year of life where they were fit, they had just the beginning stages of a few pounds that wouldn't come off, some signs of inflammation like the acne the adult acne she's done nearly everything to get to go away, and then that little bit of brain fog, that kind of, lots of unsettledness to get that brain to calm down, because she's in this really busy stage of life. So having had that, she's at the early stage of insulin resistance, early stage of a metabolic health that's about to take a step down unless she can get those mitochondria to burn ketones. And what I would say to Stacy is, quit fighting me. Take ketones every day for 2 weeks and do the best you can with a ketogenic diet in the meantime. But what will happen by circulating ketones for 2 weeks, you will not be on the supplement forever, but you will protect your body from breaking down any muscles as you work out, and you will have a stronger metabolism. Your worksheet will be much better in about 3 weeks because you've now got those mitochondria that are used to producing ketones. So that's a lot. We are at the top of the hour. I am going to do the check my ketones again and check my glucose on live YouTube to see how that turned out. And then this is the beginning of my fast that I do every week. I have my own spreadsheet. It's called Instagram. So just a couple of things that I take notice of. If you can see that little drip that's blinking there, you got to wait for that to happen before you touch your little ketone strip to it. Again, the ketone strip has a little bit more time than it takes to calibrate your ketones. And 2.3, again, that's just the few little ketones that I've added. I haven't even drank the whole thing. Again, Stacy, I would not be putting the MCT in. I would strictly be using BHB. And what happens when you do that, here's my glucose. Again, quicker on the glucose, 99. So my glucose didn't change, or maybe it went up a little bit. Stress is real. As much as I've done this a million times by now, it's still stressful for me to get on this YouTube thing. The power of what happens when you put ketones in a can, in powder, and then you say, what's the difference between the ones that have just BHB in it and BHB plus MCT, C8, C10? This would be what I would want Jerry to do. His metabolism has been practicing ketosis for a while. If he wanted something during his fast, this would be a much better thing than failing and going off of his fast. It would be to put ketones in circulation for him. However, Stacy is at a different stage of her metabolism, and you can see that by the wonderful blood sugar control she has without the production of ketones. This is the patient that you would add ketones to their circulation for 2 weeks and really give her the benefit of jump-starting her ketones. Again, I'm pretty stickler about what goes in my products. I want magnesium. I think all of my patients are low on magnesium, so my products have magnesium in them, but not a lot else. I try to keep them as clean as possible with the kind of follow-up and that quality control that I would expect in a prescription, but it's not a prescription. This is over-the-counter. Ketones have been around for many years. We're just much more thankful, for the access that we have today. All right, so there are 2 ways that you can get this. I have somebody in there that says, the link gave me the wrong spreadsheet. It is a carb protein calculator, not a log for ketones and glucose. It probably just means you need to slide over the tab. There's several tabs on the bottom. The one that's the most commonly used is the first tab, and that's where you can put your glucose. You can put it will calculate the glucose that's found in millimoles per liter, which is the rest of the world measures their ketones that way, or measures their glucose that way. Ketones are measured in millimoles per liter, and so that you only have one column for ketones. It also calculates your GKI, which is your glucose ketone index. That's what the research is that's what research uses as GKI. That's a lot of math. You got to do some, it's not terrible, but it's enough that if you use the Dr. Boz ratio, it's just the glucose divided by the ketones, and then we reach for those benchmarks. Again, I can't tell you how thankful I am for the people that show up every Sunday and have forgiveness for when I can't quite get a slide to work right. I hope you continue to find this valuable. I will ask for a thumbs up on this, and then I did see that I have reached almost 1,500 reviews for my book. And again, I think my husband told me over 500 times how I should push print on a book that I was never going to share with the world, and I'm so thankful I did. It's helped so many people. It's the story of my mom and her ketogenic journey, and it's, again, a very basic understanding of what I was trying to teach her when she was very sick. We are so thankful. She celebrates 75 years, and we'll be following up with her oncologist in the next couple of weeks. She is off chemotherapy, and the last blood count had her white blood cell count normal. That's a miracle. So the power of the ketogenic diet is not just to help people lose weight. However, when I look at helping patients, and whether it's a colleague of mine like Stacy, just seeing the beginnings of what I wish somebody would have taught me when I was in that busy chapter of pushing my life too hard, really not able to keep up with all the demands, and finding that food was one of the ways I rescued as well. It wasn't until I dove in and really unpacked the metabolic benefits of a ketogenic diet that I revamped my whole approach to medicine and my career. As I look towards expanding my career and my access, I am actually happy to announce that I am newly licensed in the state of Florida and in the state of New York. I just got that news a couple of days ago. We are praying for a medical license approval in the state of Texas. So for you believers out there, I'll ask for your prayers that the board in Texas accepts me as part of their panel. That just gives me much more access for the things that I'm hoping to do in the next chapter and the next season of my life. So thank you again. For the show notes below, you can get not only the monitors that I ask people, all of my patients to use as they fill out that spreadsheet. It's 1 meter. I know I use 2 on the channel, but it's 1 meter that 2 strips will go into. And you can use the promo code Dr. Boz to get you a discount. Again, empower yourself with the tools to look at your own